welcome, designated driver. Guess what? That is me today. I'm a little unclear on how I'm going to be able to put up with Speedo's annoying personality without a beer in my hand, but I'm willing to give anything a go at least once. I am super excited about today's subject, which is cyborgs. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about cyborgs until Sven and Speedo started talking to me about it. Some very cool technology. It goes from super helpful and incredible to actually quite scary quite quickly. But I am going to pick up Speedo now and let him talk us through it. Here he is.
Sup, Beck?
What's up?
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I am doing excellent, thank you.
That is good to hear. What are we going to be talking through today?
Today we're going to talk about cyborgs.
Okay.
Do you know what they are?
Yes.
Fantastic. It's a broad topic, so we'll cover it in 3 high-level groups.
Okay.
One is what's available here today.
Yes.
Second is what we're working on to achieve, not
Okay.
you and I, scientists that know what they're doing. Third is weird and wonderful.
Oh, weird
Yeah.
like you, wonderful like me.
Speaking of wonderful like you, imagine if
Yes.
I could implant your brain and Sven's brain with a chip that's going to give you guys the same brain capacity as mine.
Oh,
How
And
wonderful.
we could give you a personality, empathy, compassion, kindness, all of those human traits.
Science fiction you're talking about now.
We could actually give Sven some technical skills, considering he's a technologist.
Yes, that's
Loosely
highly
said.
unlikely because, you know, our base is pretty much 0.
Well, I think we should pick him up right now.
Let's pick up Sven.
Good old Sven, underline old.
The South African, is that South African
That
accent?
was the worst accent
Scottish?
I've ever heard.
Hello, hello.
What's up?
Sup, Sven? Oh, the Corona handshake.
Where are we going?
Whoa.
Oh, sorry. Put that seatbelt on.
You're going to space, by the way, you're
We're going-
accelerating.
Going nowhere at this point.
Where are we going today?
We are going to the Carlton Rooftop Bar.
Called Palmz.
Palmz.
Perfect answer. Short, precise, concise. Love it.
Tell us about it. I love it.
It's the Carlton. No,
What
so-
if you could implant Sven with a chipset that's going to improve his memory?
They just know stuff.
So, the Palmz Rooftop Bar, which is one of the most popular rooftop bars in Melbourne, especially for the locals. It's really great. You go all the way upstairs and you basically end up in this sort of tropical island kind of scene, but you're in the middle of the CBD, so you can still hear the trams on the side of the on the side of the building, and it's just a great venue. We've eaten there a couple of times. The food is
Food's
good. The drinks are good, and
Food's
I'm not
great.
the designated driver, so sucks to be you, Beck.
It certainly does. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get through it. I've struggled through the last couple of minutes with your mate here.
You loved every minute.
But like I said,
Wait,
I'll
my
give
mate?
everything a go once.
So going through Speedo in sobriety is hard for you.
Yes, but I'm excited about Cyborg, so let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Perfect.
Hi, welcome to Designated Driver, a show about ordinary people talking about extraordinary things in technology. And as you just heard in the car, we're talking about cyborgs, which has been some amazing advancements in technology. But I think maybe we should start with a definition.
Sure, thank you, Rebecca. I have my own definition, which obviously is the right definition, and it's cyber biological organism. The combination of all 3 in one thing.
Which is not quite the Oxford version of it, but hey, let's go with yours.
Correct. Oxford defines it as cybernetic organism, but then you have to define what cybernetic is.
Yeah, which they don't. They actually say cyber organism.
You were
But
close.
that's
so
cyborg.
Anyway.
Anyways,
eighth effort.
So cybernetic, right? What does that mean to you?
cybernetic is effectively the study of control and communication between a biological thing and an electronic thing.
So two-way communication.
Two-way communication.
Talk about that in a moment, but let's break things down before we go over there, right? And the best way to break this down, because it's quite a subject line, is to bring it down to 3 basic things, right? The first part of cyborgism, if that's even a word, is something that takes you from where you're at, which might be an amputee or someone who has had an injury or lost some of their function, and using technology basically to bring that person back to what the human condition can be, right? Great example of that is one of my heroes, Stephen Hawking. who was basically the original cyborg, we would not have heard all the information in his head and had all those books written had he not had technology effectively bring him back to a human state, essentially, from that perspective. The second part of that, though, is the cyborg capability that takes you beyond human, and this is the part that all the movies are made out of. This is, with the hang on, I got to do this. The cybernetic organism. That's as good as I'm going to get. Okay.
That's a Terminator Arnold Schwarzenegger reference. If you didn't get it, that joke.
It was obvious. That's what it was.
Yeah, that's the only reason I brought the dark glasses.
Very bad impersonation.
Thank you. See what I have to work with over here? Anyway, the point I'm trying to make over here is this is where technology takes you beyond human, and that's where all the movies come from. That's where all the scary stuff comes from, and the death and all that sort of stuff. But there's also good parts about that as well. There's a third category as well.
Well, speaking of beyond human, what you've covered so far is effectively things that are very much what we can do today, maybe augmented and enhanced. But what if we do things that are not human at all? For example, what if we could add extra sensors to ourselves? I like hiking. What if I could sense where the magnetic north is? Or, going back to the original definition of a cyborg, anything biological. So what if we could do something similar for plants or animals? That would be the third category.
So cybernetic dog, for example?
A dolphin. We'll cover that later. We might actually have some of those already.
Really?
So I think this is a really good opportunity to move into the common cyborg. And one of the things is there's a place in America. It's called Grindfest. It happens in the mountains of California.
Not what you're thinking.
It's actually called grinding, and what they do is they
Definitely not what you're thinking.
they implant chips into themselves. The most common one is called a firefly, I think it is, and it's just like it glows under the skin. Or you can do RFID. It's interesting.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about the common people, us basically, not the people that are getting limbs replaced and doing all that fantastic stuff. This is normal people who would, under any circumstances, do a tattoo, but now it's a tattoo that glows or it gives you information.
Well, right, and these people are thinking it's fine to do implants into your body because women do have implants for contraception, say for instance. So it's like, well, okay, if you can do that, then you can put a chip in your arm, and it sort of goes then into Kevin Warwick, who's a professor of cybernetics, and he's referred to as the like a cyborg. So he initially had done an RFID chip into his hand, which then he would walk into a building and all the lights would turn on. But now it's gone even beyond that, where he's now putting basically chips in his brain and sensors so that he's able to connect to the computer and to the internet through his brain, through his nervous system.
Has he actually put a chip in his brain, or are you making things up now?
That's a really good question.
Well, the good news is that we're going to put all that on online for you. But all
right. It's 100 small spikes that he has into his nervous system.
There you go.
That's not a brain implant, but we'll go with it.
Don't get technical, mate. It's an implant, right? Small spikes. Move on.
Small spikes, nervous system, stimulates into the computer, internet, blah, blah, blah.
But he's taking it to a different level, right? He's taking it to a different level where he's doing the same with his wife, and they are starting to communicate. I don't know why anyone would want to do this, but they're starting to feel each other's feelings, right?
So his wife can clench her hand and he can feel it.
Yeah. And that's great, but I think the point we're trying to make with the common cyborg is
it's not great.
People are
utterly
doing this.
Useless, but carry on.
Well,
Telegraphic communication.
So you say it's useless, but hang on.
Useless.
Think about this. These are people that are out there today that are doing small cyborgy kind of things, which is fine. That's what people are going to do. But what they're not probably thinking about is what is the impact of some of these things. Similar to someone, if you're going to tattoo yourself from head to toe, knock yourself out, that's your right to do.
Right.
But if you ever change your mind, it's actually a very difficult thing to do. And the same thing with your common cyborg. When you're putting your RFID chip in, when you're putting your magnetic hands on, when you're putting things in your brain, that's fine, but it's not something you can take out very quickly.
Right.
And the point I want to try to make with it, the point I want to try and make with this is that sometimes it's nice to be off the grid, right? Sometimes it's nice to put your RFID tag or your smartphone down and go out for the weekend. And here's why I think that's important. You don't get to decide who's tracking you at any given time. Which CCTV camera is watching you, which Bluetooth thing is tracking you, that is around you. So if you can't go offline or just give it a break, you are always on the grid.
But that's a very narrow slice of cyborganism, if that's a word.
Might be narrow, but popular.
And I would actually say that that's not a cyborg at all.
Why?
I realised we hadn't pressed the board button yet. Like, why? Are we actually interesting? Please continue.
Yeah, you have 10 seconds to make your point.
It's all to do with two-way communication.
Mm.
What you're explaining is a one-way communication, same as your first example with Stephen Hawking. He was effectively still using what little movement he had in his cheek to communicate. That's
So
just
that's-
like me using a laptop or a computer.
Still, that's a good point. Remember, we're talking about a continuum here of how to become a cyborg, right? And what we're talking about is the common cyborg, where people are dabbling, and it's relatively cheap. I get what you're saying. In fact,
Yeah.
let's go there right now, right? Let's talk about those people that have now got the artificial limbs. Back to number one, which
Yeah.
is people that have been injured and they want to get back to normal, right? And Speedo, to your point, that's exactly right. These are people that are putting limbs on that they can communicate with.
Correct.
And in more advanced versions of this, the limb can communicate.
We
back
actually
to you.
have, as you guys are aware, and you might be aware, we've got I like rock climbing, and we actually have a person who used to be a rock climber. He had a fall, a really bad accident, and he lost one of his legs. But they've done some surgery through Cyborg. He's got now an electronic leg.
Yeah, is that Professor Hugh Her that did it?
No, that-
No.
No.
Okay.
Not your
It
friend?
might actually been the professor.
Are you sure? From
Might have
MIT?
been Warwick or Hubert. Doesn't matter who's done the work, but back
Well,
to
it
Sven's
does.
point, he's got two-way communication
Yes.
with his feet.
Yeah, he can. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're talking about the same thing,
Yeah.
and in fact there'll be a link on that on our website as well. But that's exactly what we're talking about, because that is great. That's a good news
Yes.
story, right? This is someone
True
going back to
cyborg.
human, right?
Yep.
But it's not that far. It's not
Yeah.
that far from going to beyond human, right? Because when you can start having that two-way communication, like this wind at the moment,
Melbourne weather.
if you can still hear us, that's good. But the thing is, when you start getting that two-way communication, immediately my mind goes to, oh boy, all right, here we go. Right now we're going to have two-way communications with legs. What happens if someone really wants to take it to another level and go, you know what, I don't like my normal human legs. I'm a climber. I want to climb better than anybody else. I want to have climbing legs. And lops off their perfectly good legs because they know they're going to get cyber legs that are better and they can upgrade them every year. This is something that is not outside of human imagination, right?
Not outside of human imagination, but outside of normal human cognitive power, I guess.
Or
We've
behaviour.
established in the
Yeah.
world that humans aren't all that bright. Okay, we've established that because there's right now a shortage of toilet
Paper.
So, but humans will
But
do things like
it is
that.
true, and it kind of let's go to the second topic, which is around augmenting, because what you're effectively talking about is kind of augmenting. In this particular example, is augmenting your skills. So you
Yeah.
feel like you've trained enough, and for some reason you can't climb to the grade you want to.
This is not too different to athletes in the Olympic Games who augment their
Would you do it?
skills.
If you could, do that grade 48, whatever it is, 41, 31.
120.
I would never do it because I still enjoy the challenge.
Oh.
The human aspect is, I think, very important. But that aside, we do have technology available to us now where we could actually augment what a human can do. So as an example, if you think of people that have got a job where they're lifting heavy boxes, we've got exoskeletons and can assist them with that heavy lifting.
Yeah, and that's a great example. But again, I've always got to go to where there's good, there's always bad.
Yes.
And if you look at Hugh Her and the TED
Yes.
talk that he does, it very quickly goes from wow, this is hopeful, it's helping people,
Just
to this
kinda
is
scary.
creepy. Yeah, because
What I really loved about him was that, he didn't want to become a cyborg because he was like, well, I was dumb before, but now I'm really smart since I haven't got my legs.
yeah,
Which is an interesting concept.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We shall post the link, but I think he was just having a light-hearted humor.
Of course.
What he was implying was that because he had legs before, he was partying too hard.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
since they got chopped off in an accident, he actually had to stay at home and study a whole lot.
But I think the more important point that he was making is if you have this bidirectional communication,
Yeah.
and he uses this example, which is a great example for this talk as well, is he can envisage that if you can tie your bones and your nervous system and all those things to a technology, there's a possibility that you could fly, right? And he uses that example.
Yes, he does,
And that's
yeah.
a great example.
Yeah.
We all want to fly, and he gets all poetic after that. But again, your conspiracy brain or your reality brain goes, well, that's fine until you see 3,500 flying Navy SEALs coming your way, armed to the teeth, right? So whatever can be used for good
Right.
can be abused. And this is the things that we need to talk about, and that's an ethical discussion as well. So where do we go with that?
And
Regulation and ethical conversations. That's one of my absolute favorite topics. Funnily enough, we actually had a person in Australia, in Sydney, I believe, who had implanted his MyKey card, his chipset. And he actually got fined because
Yeah.
based on Regulation Australia, he has
Yes.
to carry his MyKey card with him.
Wow, okay.
It's another area just like artificial intelligence where our laws and legal system haven't caught up to the technology.
correct.
Speaking of, you mentioned animals, plants. I mean, regulations aside, what on earth could that mean?
The third category. So this is actually the interesting bit. Don't get me wrong, the first and second category are really important, and it's amazing that we can actually give people some of their abilities back. But the third one is where things get really crazy, in my opinion, right? This is where we,
An expert opinion, of course.
experts' opinion, this is where we give people extra sensories. As an example, I said that example of me hiking and wanting to know where magnetic north is, right? And we've actually done something similar. We've done studies.
Keep going.
You've done studies, yeah, go.
We've done studies
Okay.
where blind people, we've actually fitted them with a little device on their tongue and a camera. Depending on what the camera sees, they have a different sensation on their tongue. And after a little bit of training, they've become so good at seeing through their tongue that they can actually throw a ball into a hoop or into a basket.
That's a good example, but there's no animals involved.
But hang on a minute. This is actually really
Where are you
interesting. I
going?
will go with the animals as well, but this is really interesting because
Yeah.
imagine something a lot more complex. Imagine you're a pilot and you've got 1,000 different screens and buttons and everything else in front of you, right? What if instead of having to look at all of those, you could sense how the plane is flying?
Yep, you could feel
And
it.
then,
It's
instead
true.
of having to get all of your hands and feet and everything else involved, you could feed back the commands and directions to the plane by how you think.
How do
Which
you
is-
limit what you're sensing?
This,
Yeah,
you
what
don't-
if the pilot starts daydreaming? Oh, I'm a fighter pilot now.
Oh, and I just
This is
watched that
actually-
show about the guy that landed on the Hudson River, and oh my god, oh, we're going down, we're going down.
This is why I bring intelligence into
So-
what appears to be a random conversation.
No, but you I mean, I love your example, but
Yeah.
humans are flawed, right?
Yes,
This is the thing.
That's the
You
point.
know? Where's the braking mechanism? Where's the
There
thing
is-
that goes, oh, hang on a minute, I'll take over from here, Skynet.
You're talking about some fundamental issues that
Still
we
haven't
have
talked
as
about
humans,
animals
right?
yet.
But let's cover animals.
Yes, let's
So-
do that.
The definition of a cyborg doesn't really limit it to humans. It's anything biological. Right?
Okay.
So what if we could do the same thing to animals and or plants?
So you could talk to your cat? Like, it can actually
Exactly.
say, I'm hungry,
So right
and
now,
I'm running out of time.
right now we've got, for example, U.S. Marines, and they use dolphins to do a couple of things. You know, they seek for underwater mines, and they can seek and find, naval swimmers that have been lost.
That's just training an animal. Why
But
is
that's
that cyborg?
training an animal
Yeah.
with a whole bunch of cameras and other electronics attached to them. The animal doesn't really know what it's doing. It's just doing what it's trained.
And there's less
What if
paperwork with an animal.
Communicate with that animal.
Okay.
And then what if that animal finds a Navy SEAL, if he or she could communicate back with the animal,
It's like, hey, Skippy.
kind of like that. But the same thing actually applies to plants. This is one for my vegetarian friends. Do I have one? Yes, I do
Well,
have
We're
a
not
vegetarian.
friends,
friend.
so it doesn't matter.
But a vegetarian.
Vegetarian.
Studies have shown that if you, as an example, cut a plant's leaf, it actually sends an electric signal.
Yeah.
So it senses
Yeah.
something.
That
right?
plant is not happy.
Can't call it pain, call it whatever you like, but it senses
You're not a
something.
plant, you can't speak for all plants.
I think vegetarians
What vegetarian
don't take
would
into
say.
account the pain that they're causing to plants. Just saying.
Correct.
Not
But
plants,
we're going
animals,
off topic.
maybe. Yeah.
plants are good at sensing certain things.
You're not.
What if we could get plants to communicate back to us the quality of the air?
That's actually a good point, because there are projects happening around the world where trees are being monitored, forests are being monitored. We're starting to learn that underground, where the trees actually communicate at the root level, makes a forest, for example, an entire organism, and we don't even know what that is. If you were to add cybernetics or some sort of technology back to that,
Yeah.
we could get way more information out of that. But we're going slightly off topic because this is no longer about technology replacing a limb and having that bi-directional communication that we're talking about.
Right.
But we have made a few points, and some of those
Super
points
interesting.
are some of those points are yes, we can help people
Yep.
and all that. This is kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay, so I think this is a really good opportunity to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. So
Yeah.
for me, the good is, if you're disabled, then you can be given back your normalcy, basically. So, for instance, if you're a climber like you are, if you lost a hand or a limb, it would be quite devastating for you, right?
Absolutely.
To not be able to climb again. So, I mean, to be able to have that limb back where it meant that you could run or you could walk or just live life normally, I think that's good.
Yep, and I agree with you. And just to augment that a little bit further, it's about getting people out of the shadows. People who are currently relegated, into the shadows. Bring them back out and use these amazing talents that are out there, but they just can't be part of society because of the reasons that
Yes.
you've just mentioned.
So maybe perhaps go into the bad.
So the bad is something we haven't even talked about at all in this entire segment, and that is, if it is technology, it can be hacked, right? There's two types of technologies in the world, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. Now, if you could imagine when you've got your augmented arms, legs, wings, whatever it might be, there's always going to be a situation where that can be manipulated in some way. And I was actually talking to my little girl the other day about it, where we're all, little children flying to school with your little wings, but there's somebody who's going, all right, let's make those wings stop, and then everyone falls to the floor, right?
So then what would be the ugly? If that's only bad,
That's the bad.
What's the ugly besides your face?
Thank you. Us humans, we've got a tendency to abuse power and technology. And we are really good at ruining ourselves and our environment. Imagine if you've got an army of cyborgs
Yes.
in warfare.
Yeah.
And imagine if we do the same thing to poor animals. I mean, we've already have, 60% of them extinct. What are we going to do to the remaining 40%?
And that's the thing, whatever can be used for good or bad, it can definitely be used for ugly.
And so who's going to then regulate these companies that have got the money and the power or military and stop them from, making an army that wipes out everybody else? It's ugly.
Well, regulation is one thing, enforcement is another altogether.
Correct.
Now-
And I think now we should go into our whinge file.
We're in the mood.
Before
We're
we
in the
bore
mood.
you, we're going to the whinge file. So my whinge is actually, it's mass panic. As you may have experienced this, if you're in Australia with no toilet paper currently because of the coronavirus, people have gone into mass hysteria because of what I see is a social media play. Really, everybody is fearing and pumping more and more fear into the community, and people are freaking out.
It is not the coronavirus or the social media, it's people with low IQs. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Never underestimate the dumbness.
Okay, your
the
whinge
dumbness
file
of
is...
people. So I'm going to be quick on this winch file, but I want to just take you on a quick journey, right? Imagine going to the Himalayas and putting, come on, work with me over here, right? You take a balloon, you fill it with fresh air. No, don't do that. And then you put that balloon onto a truck. The truck
We
takes it
do
down
that,
to the
Sven,
thing.
with Norway and Canada. We export fresh air from those countries.
Guys, what I'm actually describing is not fresh air. What I'm describing is things that you and me and everyone else does, which is bottled water. For goodness sake, people, we don't need the plastic, we don't need the diesel, we don't need the ships, we don't need the environmental footprint. If you're in a first world country, or you're in a country that has fresh water coming out of your tap, you do not need bottled water. Stop buying it. It is ridiculous.
Your whinge.
This is going to be an interesting one. In Melbourne, we have got the
according to
highest
you.
number of cyclists. I'm all for it, supporting of them.
And I'm one of them.
Cyclist.
What I do not like are cyclists that think they're above the law.
Motorbike
The ones that
riders.
think a red light doesn't apply to them. Hate them, get them off the roads.
Irony coming from a motorbike rider.
Boom! All right, so
That is the board button, not the stop button.
Oh, I just got bored because
got
it was going to get nasty and mean. So I think this is a really good opportunity to introduce our next subject.
Yeah, so in the next episode, we're going to actually continue on what we've been building up so far. So we started off with AI, we've moved into Cyborg, now we're going to go into the medical side of this. So this is where the lines are very, very, very blurred, and you start looking about how we augment humans or anything else for that matter at the medical level.
Very
biomedicine.
interesting. You
Yeah.
need to tune back into us, designated driver.
Because we're the experts in everything.
Nobody is an expert. Yeah,
No,
again,
we are.
Ordinary people people talking
Experts.
extraordinary things in technology. However, we have had videos posted and comments on other people's
Great
whinges,
comments.
as well as feedback on our first episode. So please stay tuned. We're going to play them for you. And if you want to comment or, you know, send us a video of what you think of this last episode. Was it boring? Was it good? I don't know.
Be brutal.
Why not?
You like brutal.
And we are out.
Designated Driver, episode number 1.
That was a great first video.
Great first episode.
Really good opinion.
I thought the introduction was a little long.
Was a bit long.
Snappy,
Get to the
short.
point.
Oh, some people might enjoy watching long videos, but not me.
And slow it down a bit.
Sometimes it was really hard to listen to the conversation because it moved a little too quick.
I thought it was a bit too long.
Board button, I think it was overused.
Bang button.
Yeah, the what is
stop.
the
Stop.
stop button. I didn't understand that.
It gets boring.
So are you taking shots when it gets boring?
Again, I get the concept of the board button, just use it less.
Interesting.
shots
I'm just
instead
saying,
of
if
like
it's going to
the
be designated
buzzer.
driver,
A bit less staring at the camera.
And maybe not stare so much at the camera.
oh, there was a stare. We won't say
like
who,
that. But yeah, we won't say who. Like the whole time, maybe make like
but
some human
break eye contact.
Yeah.
Everybody does it, or no
and
one
then
does it. You
Sven,
can't have a
maybe you look at
stare.
the camera.
Great idea, great concept.
I thought it was a great starter topic.
Looking forward to the next one.
Great first attempt. Looking forward to seeing
Yes,
many more.
yes.
Yes.
If you put me on the next episode of Designated Drivers, hi guys!